this oppression of man. Now the time comes to sit down and rediscover what's life. Show the world the true meaning of real love, power, not strife.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Your Excellency Camille Robinson-Regis, Chair Lady of tonight's proceedings and Vice Chairman of the People's National Movement. Chairman of the People's National Movement, Mr. Franklin Kahn, my colleague at the head table, Member of Parliament for Diego Martin Northeast, Senator Faris Al-Rawi, who tonight did his grandfather proud. He's the grandson of Lionel Sukaran, as you remember. Member of Parliament for Aruka Maloney, Ms. Alicia Hospitalis. Chairman of Deputy Political Leaders, Mr. Rohan Sinanan, who is our Deputy Policy, Deputy Political Leader, Party and Elections, Mrs. Joan Yule-Williams, Deputy Political Leader, Legislative, Ms. Marlene MacDonald, Lady Vice Chairman and Chairman of the Women's League of the PNM, Ms. Donna Cox, Party Field Officer, Mr. Indar Parasram, and all the other party officers scattered in the crowd here this evening or gathered behind me on the stage. If I call them all, it will take up all night because the PNM is here gathered this evening at Five Rivers Junction. Members of the PNM, members of the community of Five Rivers, visitors, and fellow citizens. Yes, Aruka. Fellow citizens listening at home, we want you to listen to the PNM's educational platform tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, I'm a Tobagonian. Can't help it. When I was a little boy, we had a garden, we always had a garden. And one of the things we planted was corn. And I used to have the chore of having to weed and mold up corn. And sometimes the corn plants, young corn shoots would look stout and fat. And you'd be pleased. And other times, depending on where they're located and whether they look scrawny and thin. And my grandmother used to always tell me, in good old Tobago parlance, if corn are going to make air, you will see on my foot. In other words, you Trinidadians who don't understand that, if it's going to turn out well, you will know from early. So when Kamla Prasad Bisesa became Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, one of the first things she did that shocked this country and the world, she appointed Reshmi Ramnarayan as head of the SIA. Inexplicable up to this day. And she flatly refused to tell us why she did that. I told you, Reshmi wanted the job, and the Prime Minister could not say no, and it's for you to figure out why. But most importantly, the Prime Minister did that at the committee meeting of the National Security Council. And at that meeting was presented supporting evidence to justify the appointment of Reshmi. And in that documentation, they fabricated a qualification for Reshmi. Remember the former minister, Sandy, telling us about Reshmi's UE degree? And UE said we don't know anything about her. And you remember Julie Brown, who is now in charge of monitoring phones and listening to you and what kind of thing? Right. You remember she wrote the Prime Minister and told her that Reshmi wasn't a telephone operator, that she was a senior manager in the SIA? Those lies started the ball. Still unfinished because we still do not know from the Prime Minister why she did that. The next thing you know, even as the Minister of National Security agreed and understood from whence he came, because he came from the Defense Force. He was head of the Defense Force. And by that appointment, he would have been a member of the National Security Council before he became minister. That's John Sandy. And he knew, and he said so, that the country wanted offshore patrol vehicles if we are to patrol our borders and secure it from drug runners and gun runners, if we are to bring down crime and stay safe in this country. But in that argument and that desire of John Sandy, Prime Minister Kamala Prasad Bisesa get the same John Sandy to come to Parliament and say the OPVs are not required and that they are lemons, and they cancel the contract. And what happened? The PNM told them, if you do that, we're going to end up in arbitration. They got their spokesperson to tell us, Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, that when we cancel the contract, we will get back $1 billion. And we'll use that $1 billion to build schools and hospitals and roads and to buy helicopter for to fly around the country. The PNM told them then, what you will get is a lawsuit in your person. And you will have no defense. Well, I can tell you that the arbitration was going on, and has it ended? Have you heard anything from the government about the outcome of the arbitration? Well, the last thing I heard is that the government was busy attempting to enter into an arrangement where the outcome of the arbitration would remain sealed, so you will never know what happened. There are no $1 billion coming here. And whatever they lost and whatever they pay, including millions of dollars to lawyers to make the AG smile. Arbitration. I need to see how beautiful those two vessels are sailing in Brazil. But they started off under our colors. And this government put an end to that. And the borders are still open. They're now asking for help from other countries to help us close our borders. And of course, when they came into office, like it or don't like it, there was an airship in this country that was working. It was part of the special anti-crime unit asset base, listening to criminal conversations and helping the police to monitor criminals. Working fine. They never liked it. They never wanted it. They brought it down on the ground and they sold it at scrap. Remember that? And every gun runner, every drug dealer in this country smiled from ear to ear. You remember a minister of government called Mary King? Mary King was fired with great fanfare and righteous indignation by the Prime Minister. But what I don't want you to forget is that when Mary King was fired for having admitted taking part in the evaluation of a small contract where her husband's company was involved, and that was ethically wrong, the Prime Minister had known about it long before. And Mary King told us that when the Prime Minister knew about it, she spoke to the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister gave it to Annan Ramlogan to look into. Not once, but twice, the Office of Attorney General looked into Mary King's behavior and found nothing wrong with it. And what happened? Mary King stayed in the job until the Express broke the story and there was public concern and outcry, and the Prime Minister fired Mary King, and all her friends and sycophants were praising her for having the power to fire Mary King. Could we get this mic fixed, please? Hello, could we get this microphone fixed, please? Okay, sorry about that. There's a little problem here with this piece of equipment. But I was telling you, so that was the Prime Minister's behavior in there. And even as she was seen to not have acted properly, where she gave Mary King the clearance to continue, her advisors and the ones who want to brainwash you were giving her credit for the firing of Mary King. We told you, watch this Prime Minister. She's not to be taken at face value. Then there was the NP contract. Remember the NP contract? Which just happened to be going to a garbage collector, a contractor who is in the employ of the state, known to the Prime Minister, because they were so friendly that he gave her a bed and I don't know what else he gave her, but when she became Prime Minister, she headed for his house. There was, according to them, there was a palace in St. Anne's, too good for a Prime Minister, but it was there available to her. She ended up in Gopal's house. Not for a day, not for a week, but for months. It was only when the opposition intervened to prevent police from taking up duty guarding Gopal's house that she went into the state house, that she passes through every so often because she operating from Philippines. Anyway, that NP contract just happened to have been rigged, to use the AG's word. Remember when the AG intervened? There was an investigation underway, authorized by Minister Caroline Sipasad Bechan, to see how come Gopal happened to get that contract. The AG, on the Prime Minister's direction and instruction, intervened. He fired the Sipasad Bechan investigators. He himself investigated it. And he determined that yes, there was bid rigging, but he identified no one who was guilty of that crime. And the next thing you know, Gopal is a conglomerate now. All kind of things they're into. No longer garbage. They're into quarry. They're into dredging. They're into this. They're into that. And they're now one of the biggest conglomerates in Trinidad and Tobago. But I don't bother with that, because the Integrity Commission said there was nothing wrong with the Prime Minister being there. So let me move on from that. When I went to the vote of no confidence in the Parliament, and I talked about a minister using the government credit card as her own shopping card. Remember shopping topping, my countrywoman? The Prime Minister found there was nothing wrong there. And they tried to tell you through the mouth of Munilal, leader of government business, that it was only $4,000 and she paid it back. Simple matter, straightforward matter, lie. It was tens of thousands of dollars, and it was only paid back when I raised the matter in the Parliament. But it was the party in Tobago, not the Prime Minister, It was the party in Tobago that called Topping in front of Tobagonians, because Tobagonians don't stick that. Top or bottom. Whatever you want to call Jack, top or bottom, he called Topping to order in Tobago. And then the Prime Minister had to fire the minister. Remember that? She didn't fire Toppin for abusing the credit card. She fired her because the Tobago party said, we don't want to be embarrassed and ashamed by this woman. And then we had her sister flying first class as an assistant. And we didn't have any problem with our Prime Minister having an assistant if she has a need for an assistant. But there's a procedure to be followed if you're hiring anybody in the government. But then there's a system, and she comes in as your assistant, and we ask, what is the process you're using? Turned out, up to now, they haven't told us what the process is. But the Integrity Commission says there's nothing wrong with that. So let me just explain to you that my only mention of this here is that when she had to admit that her sister wasn't a nurse, as they tried to tell us, and that she was flying first class, and that she had received taxpayers' money to the tune of almost $1 million in 24 months, she said, but I am not the first one to have done that. Mr. Robinson was doing that too, and forced President Robinson to come out and say, please, don't mix me up in your foolishness and your lies. I have never had a member of my family, my daughter or my son, be my assistant. So don't use that as any excuse for your conduct. Understand? So the corn plant growing. And then, you know, when Jack Warner was appointed minister, he was before that in the parliament as an MP. We never raised any issue about Jack Warner as an MP. Because as an MP, in your position, or outside of the cabinet, or without ministerial rank of any kind, you are a part-time employee. And you are free to find employment wherever you wish, or engage in your business or your profession. So we never raised any issue about Jack Warner, who was a member of parliament and was looking after his constituents and speaking in the parliament. But when Jack Warner was appointed a minister, the very first thing I did as opposition leader in this country, even as they were drinking some wine and celebrating my appointment, I raised with the Prime Minister and the country the inappropriateness of Jack Warner retaining his executive position in $1 billion international enterprise called FIFA while he was a member of the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. I drew it to your attention that this was against the parliamentary approved code of ethics, a code that Mrs. Prasad herself voted for and must know because she's a parliamentarian and a lawyer. And when she was confronted with that and realized that there was nothing that Jack is going to give up and that he will retain his FIFA position in the face of all requests for ethical behavior, she initially said, Jack will do the right thing. In other words, Jack will choose either or. And when Jack said he's not choosing any, he's taking both, the Prime Minister said, ethics here mean work ethic. And since then, Jack has been trying to prove that he has the best work ethic in the country. He's bedwet, going to work in the morning 4 o'clock, having appointments 3 o'clock, being in office 10 o'clock, and Jack is trying to prove that ethics mean work ethic. The Prime Minister, who initially said, Jack will do the right thing, could not make Jack do the right thing because she's afraid that Jack might do the wrong thing. So she had to accept Jack as FIFA Vice President, and of course you know that played out. When the scandal broke at FIFA, because I warned you all that this man could get our country into disgraceful positions because of his personal business at FIFA. When the scandal broke at FIFA, the same man who couldn't give it up didn't wait until they pushed him, he jumped. And then there are people in this country who should know better, who are telling us the man does work hard, he gets benefits to us at FIFA, so leave the man. No ethical standards, no values, and convenience as principle. That is where they were taking Trinidad and Tobago. And I don't have the time tonight to go into the stories about him and FIFA, except to tell you as of today, they have announced in CONCACAF that this same judge from Barbados, former Chief Justice from Barbados, who is here in Trinidad doing the inquiry, has now been hired to inquire into CONCACAF. Stay tuned.